Welcome to the first episode of Scriptures Are Like Statistics. You can make them say whatever you want. Today, I want to talk about a very specific scripture, which is in Genesis 28, and it's about when Jacob actually leaves his home of his mother and father and travels to his uncle's house, Laban. And one of the things that strikes me about this set of scriptures is that in verse 20, Jacob starts to negotiate with God. And one of the ways that we can think about this is that, just before he left, the reason why Jacob left was because he had stolen his brother's birthright. And so his mother and father said to him, "You need to go somewhere else and not be here." And so if I was Jacob, or whenever I do something that I know is not right, that I have taken something that doesn't belong to me, I kind of feel guilty. And I don't just feel a little bit guilty, especially when it comes to something as important as a birthright. So as Jacob is leaving, he spends his first night in the wilderness. He's alone, and he has this conversation with God. And he sees in a dream or a vision that he sees a ladder that goes from heaven to earth. And up and down this ladder are the angels of God. And God is standing at the top of the ladder, and he's saying to Jacob, "You are still my child, and I still love you, and I still protect you, and you're still mine." And I could imagine that Jacob feels pretty guilty because he knows he did a bad thing. And the birthright is a blessing. And that blessing is typically a promise that God is going to provide for all of your needs and make your life abundant and prosperous and things like that. So, as Jacob is wrestling with this concept of guilt, he says to God, "If you will do what you say, then I will believe that you are still my God. And because of that, I will pay you. I will pay a tithe, but it's really to God, an offering. And some might even call it a sin offering or not, a tithe, a tenth of everything that comes to me. Everything that I am prospered, I will pay a tenth." Now, oftentimes we think of that as in terms of money, but prosperity is bigger than money. It's also about time. It's also about love. It's about effort. It's about understanding and a willingness to learn. Because when you have prosperous thinking, you have the ability to learn more and more about what is going on around you. So Jacob's bargaining with God is about if you promise to do what you say, because of course Jacob didn't believe that God would do that still because he had broken the law, which was to not steal your brother's birthright, and then had left his family, which was really his center of community and his center where God really was. There was no altar where he was, there was no setting apart or making that ground sacred. And so Jacob had to then say, "This ground now is sacred because I've made this bargain with God." And we know that sometimes when we get into a tight spot, we start bargaining with God. "God, if you just let me get out of this, I will go to church every Sunday. I will read the Bible. I will do good works. I will do whatever." And that bargaining is how we sort of atone for our mistakes or our errors in judgment, those kinds of things. So when we look at this, we could see this as God just stands there and waits for us to come to him. And he hasn't changed, but we act like he's changed. So we put the change on God, but it's really our vain imaginings, as Florence Scovel Shinn would say. We imagine that God is angry, or that God doesn't love us, or that we are not blessed, or we're not prospered, or we have no abundance, because we have transgressed, which is not a word that we use typically in this day and age, but we have done something wrong. We know it. We knew it when we did it. We planned it, and we made sure that it happened. And now we're waiting for that shoe to fall, right? The other shoe, the consequence for our behavior. But because God is like, "Well, that's on you. It's not me. I didn't do that. You did that." And it's up to you to forgive yourself. So when we think about Genesis 28:20 and how Jacob made a bargain with God, God was not really interested in making a bargain. God just said, "Yeah, you made a mistake, but it's not who you are. You are still the same person that I saw before." So the message for me is that not only is God consistent, when I've always thought that he wasn't, because I see all the other things that have happened, but also that forgiving ourselves is really the beginning of feeling forgiven by God or feeling forgiven by the law. And one of the ways that I really see this is, again, how Florence Scovel Shinn puts it is that the Lord is the law, or the law is the Lord. So God is really just the law. And the law is things like the law of gravity, the law of vibration, the law of covalent bonds, natural law that has been handed down way before the Bible ever came into existence, even before the Jews came into existence. And in the Jewish year, we're in 5800 something. So these are just natural laws that have always existed. And the law has always existed regardless of our religious belief or faith. So if you can forgive yourself, then you can imagine that God, the Lord, the law also forgives you because all you have to do is forgive yourself first. So that's the end of my episode number one of Scriptures Are Like Statistics. You can make them say anything you want. My name is Jay Cafretta, and thanks for joining me.